Have you ever wished you could understand what someone is really thinking, beyond the polite smiles, the practiced sentences, and the walls we all learn to build? The truth is, you don't need supernatural abilities to read someone's mind. You just need the courage to ask the right questions and the patience to truly listen. True understanding comes from curiosity, not assumptions. It's one of the simplest truths of human connection, yet one of the hardest to practice. Most of us move through life believing we already know what someone meant, why they acted a certain way, or how they feel, because assumptions are fast, convenient, and emotionally protective. They save us time. They protect our ego. They prevent us from asking questions that might lead to uncomfortable answers. But assumptions also build walls where connection could have existed. They shut down conversations before they begin. They turn people into characters in the stories we create, rather than allowing them to be who they truly are. Curiosity, on the other hand, takes humility. It requires us to admit we don't know everything. It invites us to step into another person's world with openness instead of judgment. Curiosity says, I want to understand you, not the version of you I've created in my mind. That is a radically different approach. When you choose curiosity, you choose patience. You choose empathy. You choose to listen without preparing your rebuttal. You choose to see the human behind the behavior. Assumptions often come from fear, fear of being wrong, fear of being hurt, fear of facing our own insecurities. So instead of asking, we assume. Instead of clarifying, we react. Instead of exploring, we conclude. But every assumption blocks an opportunity to learn something deeper about someone's intentions, their hurts, their needs, or their values. It is impossible to understand someone if we have already decided what their truth is. Curiosity dissolves conflict that assumptions would have made worse. A simple curious question like, can you tell me what you meant by that? Or, help me understand where you're coming from, can turn tension into clarity. Many arguments don't come from disagreement, they come from misunderstanding. And misunderstanding is simply the absence of curiosity. True understanding is a practice, a mindset, and sometimes a bravery. Because curiosity can lead you to truths you may not have expected. It may reveal someone's pain. It may show you their vulnerability. It may highlight their needs or even expose your own blind spots. But this is what genuine connection requires: the courage to listen, the courage to ask, and the courage to learn. When you replace assumptions with curiosity, you give relationships space to breathe. You allow people to feel seen instead of judged. You build trust because you show that you value truth over your own interpretations. You create an environment where people don't have to defend themselves, they can simply be themselves. And the beautiful thing is this: curiosity doesn't just help you understand others better, it also helps you understand yourself. The moment you stop assuming you know everything, you open the door to growth. You open the door to compassion. You open the door to deeper, richer, and more authentic human connection. True understanding is never accidental. It is intentional. It begins with a choice to be curious, to ask, and to listen with the goal of understanding, not responding. That is how connection is built. That is how trust is earned. That is how relationships flourish. Asking, what does that mean to you? Reveals the story beneath the surface, because every experience, every emotion, and every reaction carries a personal meaning shaped by someone's history, beliefs, fears, and values. Most people communicate in brief summaries, simple statements that cover the facts but hide the emotional layers underneath. They say things like, I'm stressed, I didn't like that, or it wasn't a big deal, but they rarely explain why. And without that why, we only understand the headline, not the full story. This question gently invites someone to open those hidden chapters. When you ask, what does that mean to you? You signal that you're not just listening to the words they're hearing. You're listening to the person behind the words. You're giving them space to unpack their internal world, the part they usually keep tucked away because most people never ask for it. This question sends a powerful message. Your perspective matters. Your experience matters. I want to understand how you see it, not how I assume it is. Every emotion carries meaning. Anger can mean betrayal. Silence can mean protection. A strong reaction can mean an old wound has been touched. But we can't understand any of that if we rely on our own interpretation. Two people can live through the same moment and walk away with completely different meanings because of their past, their personality, or even their insecurities. When you ask someone to explain what something means to them, you're asking them to translate their emotional language into something you can understand. And that translation is where real connection lives. This question also opens the door to vulnerability. People often hide the deeper meaning of their feelings because they fear being dismissed or misunderstood. When you ask them directly, you make it safe for them to share what they actually felt, maybe rejected, maybe overwhelmed, maybe hopeful, maybe afraid. You invite them to go beyond the rehearsed explanation and into the honest one. And once someone shares the meaning behind their experience, you gain access to their emotional truth. Understanding someone's meaning also prevents unnecessary conflict. Many arguments start because we assume someone's reaction matches our interpretation, but meaning is personal. When a friend says, "I felt ignored," asking what that means to them may reveal that being ignored reminds them of childhood neglect or past emotional abandonment. That deeper story changes the entire conversation. It shifts your response from defensiveness to compassion. Even in positive moments, this question deepens connection. When someone says, "This made me really happy," asking what it means to them uncovers the values, dreams, and hopes that shaped that joy. You learn what they cherish, what they long for, and what genuinely matters to them. The power of "what does that mean to you" lies in its simplicity and its softness. It doesn't assume. It doesn't intrude. It gently opens a door and lets the other person decide how far to walk through it. And in that openness, people reveal who they truly are, their fears, their hopes, their longings, and the hidden meanings behind the moments that shape them. That is how you move from surface-level communication to deep, honest human understanding. The toughest truths appear when you ask about someone's struggles because struggle is the place where people stop performing and start being real. Most of us spend our daily lives trying to look composed, stable, and in control. We share the polished parts of ourselves, the achievements, the plans, the rehearsed confidence, but struggle strips away the masks. It reveals what someone fears, what they battle with quietly, and what parts of their heart are still healing. When you ask someone about the hardest part of what they're going through, you're inviting them into a moment where honesty matters more than appearance. Struggles are where the deepest stories live. Someone might tell you they're fine, handling it, or just tired. But behind those simple lines are layered emotions: fear of failure, pressure to be strong, exhaustion from carrying responsibilities they can't talk about, or disappointment they haven't processed. When you ask directly, with compassion, "What's the hardest part for you?" you give them permission to let down their guard. You invite them to share the truth they often hide because they don't want to burden others or appear weak. When people open up about their struggles, they're not just giving information, they're offering trust. They're letting you into the backstage of their life, where the makeup is off and the vulnerability is real. And the truths revealed in that space are powerful. You learn what keeps them awake at night, what memories shape their reactions, and what fears make certain situations harder for them than they appear on the surface. You begin to see not just their actions, but the reasons behind them. The toughest truths also appear here because struggle exposes someone's unfiltered self. When life is calm, people speak in logic. But when they feel overwhelmed, stressed, or hurt, they speak in emotion. Their guard drops. Their honesty rises. And that's where the truth comes out: truth about their limits, their hopes, their disappointments, and sometimes their deepest insecurities. These truths aren't always pretty, but they're real. And realness is the foundation of genuine connection. Asking about someone's struggle also combats one of the most painful human experiences: feeling alone. Many people believe no one would understand what they're carrying, or that their emotions are too much. When you ask about the hardest part, you acknowledge their humanity. You tell them, without words, "You don't have to pretend with me." Often, that single question is enough to break open a truth they've been holding in for years. And here's the quiet beauty of it. When someone reveals their toughest truths, they often discover something about themselves too. Speaking it aloud helps them make sense of their pain, reflect on their patterns, or release something they've been suppressing. Your question becomes their doorway to clarity, and sometimes even healing. The hardest truths are not found in someone's success, accomplishments, or plans. They're found in their struggle, the place where their courage, their fears, and their true story live. When you ask about that place with genuine empathy, you don't just understand the person better. You connect with them at a depth most people never reach. Needs stay hidden until someone feels safe enough to express them, because expressing a need is one of the most vulnerable things a human being can do. A need is not just a request, it is an admission of desire, weakness, hope, fear, and longing, all at once. To say, "I need this from you," is to open the most tender part of yourself and trust that the other person will not reject it, mock it, or use it against you. That level of honesty requires emotional safety, and emotional safety is something people often lack. Most people learned early in life that expressing needs can be risky. Maybe they were ignored, maybe they were shamed, maybe they were told they were too sensitive, too demanding, or too much. Over time, they learned to silence themselves. They learned to meet their own needs quietly or pretend those needs didn't exist at all. So instead of speaking, they cope, they hide, they detach, they act like they don't care. But beneath that calm surface, their needs remain, waiting for a safe enough moment to come out. Safety is not created by grand gestures. It is created by small, consistent signals. Someone who listens without judgment, someone who doesn't interrupt or dismiss, someone who doesn't weaponize vulnerabilities, someone who asks with care, "What do you need right now?" When a person senses that kind of presence, their guard begins to soften. They start to believe that maybe this time, it's safe to be real. When someone finally expresses a need, it's often not the first need they had, it's the first one they believed they could reveal. That is the difference safety makes. Safety turns internal silence into external truth. It turns suppression into communication. It turns emotional distance into connection. People are not withholding because they want to be difficult. They are withholding because they have been taught that honesty might cost them something. And here's the deeper truth: hidden needs don't disappear. They show up in indirect ways: frustration, resentment, withdrawal, irritability, or emotional exhaustion. A person who cannot express what they need will eventually express what they feel, and usually that comes out sideways. Safe conversations, on the other hand, prevent that buildup. When someone feels safe enough to share a need, they are not just opening up to you, they are trusting you with a part of their emotional world. This is why asking, "What do you need right now?" is such a powerful question. It cuts through assumptions. It removes guessing. It gives the person a moment to check in with themselves. Maybe they need reassurance. Maybe they need space. Maybe they need guidance or calm or honesty or simply someone who won't judge them for being human. And sometimes they don't even know what they need until someone cares enough to ask. True connection requires this kind of space, the kind where needs can be spoken without fear. When someone feels emotionally safe, their truth emerges naturally. Their walls lower. Their heart relaxes. They stop performing strength and allow themselves to be seen. Because the moment someone realizes they will not be punished for having needs, that is the moment they finally let their real self come forward. Everyone carries a part of themselves they wish others understood: a quiet truth, a hidden struggle, a misunderstood intention, or a piece of their identity that never seems to translate fully into the world. It's the part we don't show easily, not because we don't want to, but because we've learned that not everyone listens with care. Every person moves through life with layers. The outer layer we show to the world, the inner layer we show to a few, and then the deepest layer, often untouched, unspoken, and unseen. That deepest layer holds the truths we wish someone would notice without us having to explain. People hide these deeper parts for many reasons. Some hide them because they've been misunderstood before. Some because their vulnerability was once used against them. Some because they fear their truth will be dismissed or judged. And some because they simply don't have the words to express what they feel. So they carry that part of themselves quietly, hoping that one day, someone will care enough to ask, "What do you wish others understood about you?" When someone asks that question with sincerity, it opens a door that rarely opens. It gives a person permission to step out from behind their practiced expressions and reveal what's actually happening inside. They might share the loneliness behind their confidence, the sensitivity behind their strength, the fear behind their quick reactions, or the exhaustion behind their constant giving. They might reveal the intentions behind choices that were misinterpreted, or the battles they've fought in silence while the world assumed they were fine. This hidden part often contains some of the most meaningful truths about a person. It reflects their history, their wounds, their resilience, and their hopes. It shows what they value, what they fear, and what they long for. When someone reveals this part of themselves, they are not just sharing information, they are sharing identity. And to be understood at that level is one of the most profound forms of human connection. The tragedy is that many people go through life never experiencing that kind of understanding. They keep their true self tucked away because they believe no one is interested in seeing it. But the reality is simpler. Most people never ask. We live in a world that focuses on reactions, not reasons. We judge behaviors before seeking context. We notice what people do without wondering why they do it. And because of that, the deepest parts of people remain unseen. When someone finally feels understood in the place they needed it most, something shifts. They relax. They open. They trust. they feel less alone. It becomes easier for them to communicate, to soften, to be present. And you begin to see them, not the version shaped by fear or expectation, but the true version shaped by sincerity. Everyone carries something they wish others understood. A hidden softness, a long-standing hurt, a fear they can't shake, a dream they're afraid to admit, or a truth they've never said aloud. When you create a space where someone can express that truth without judgment, you give them one of the rarest gifts in the world, the feeling of finally being seen. Judgment-free questions unlock a person's deepest truth because they create the one thing every human needs before they can be honest: safety. When someone senses even a hint of criticism, comparison, or pressure, they instinctively protect themselves. They speak carefully. They filter their words. They share only the polished version of their thoughts. But the moment they realize they will not be judged, only heard, something inside them loosens. The walls they've been holding up quietly begin to lower, and their real truth finally has room to step forward. Most of us grow up in environments where being honest felt risky. Maybe honesty led to punishment, rejection, or being misunderstood. Maybe it caused conflict, or someone made us feel foolish for what we felt. Because of these experiences, we learn to hide the raw parts of ourselves. We learn to speak in safe sentences. We learn to share just enough to get by, but not enough to be fully seen. Judgment, even subtle judgment, makes people retreat into these protective patterns. But judgment-free curiosity breaks those patterns gently, without force. A judgment-free question sounds different. It doesn't sound like an interrogation. It doesn't imply blame. It doesn't pressure someone to justify themselves. Instead, it sounds open, patient, and spacious. Questions like, "What's going on for you?" Or, "How did that feel?" Or, "What were you afraid might happen?" give a person permission to explore their truth out loud. These questions don't demand a perfect answer. They invite an honest one. They tell the person, "You don't have to impress me. You don't have to protect yourself from me. I'm here to understand, not to evaluate." When someone feels that kind of acceptance, their deepest truth often comes out unexpectedly. They soften. They stop rehearsing their responses. They tap into emotions they didn't realize were waiting to be expressed: fear they never admitted, sadness they pushed aside, hopes they kept hidden, or pain they never felt allowed to voice. Sometimes the truth that emerges is something they've never spoken to anyone, including themselves. That is the power of being asked a question with no judgment attached. It gives people a safe mirror to look into. Judgment-free questions also reveal the truth beneath the behavior. Instead of reacting to what someone did, you understand why they did it. Instead of assuming their motives, you learn their intentions. Instead of labeling their emotional reactions, you understand their emotional history. And in that deeper understanding, compassion naturally grows, conflict softens, misunderstandings dissolve, connection strengthens. When you ask without judgment, you're not just gathering information, you're building trust. You're sending the message, your truth is safe here. And once someone believes that, they are far more likely to share the thoughts they usually silence, the fears they hide, and the feelings they swallow. In that moment, honesty becomes easy because honesty is no longer dangerous. A person's deepest truth is rarely loud. It sits quietly, waiting for a safe invitation. Judgment-free questions are that invitation. They open the door to authenticity, vulnerability, and real human connection. The kind that changes relationships, heals misunderstandings, and helps people finally feel seen.